friends, and welcome to Tea with Me. I am here today with two trailblazers, and what I actually have written down as industry icons. That's what I consider you guys, industry icons. So we're going to go ahead and get going. And Jeffrey, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, and then we'll move on to Sherry.
Sure. So my name is Jeffrey Roach. I work for Encore Tech. I guess most people who know me from the Elta days, probably from a company called Perfect Access, which became Perfect Access Sphere. And my career has largely been around training and support and change management. So it's very front-end facing. I've been lucky enough to spend most of my career working directly with people who are using the products that we're talking about. So that's been very rewarding, because it's one thing to build it, but it's a whole other thing when you actually see people use it and get excited about it, or ask questions about it, or even challenge you on why did we do something like that. So that's where I've spent all my time. And obviously I'm happily married. I have a child who is now 19. And it's crazy because people in Ilta will say, I remember when you brought him that first time and he was a tiny little boy, and he took your wedding ring and he put it through the wall of the hotel, and the hotel had to dig an entire hole in the wall to get your wedding band out. And I'm like, yes, that is actually true. That did happen. And I can't believe you remember it. So my son has grown up kind of in and around Ilta, and all of our, well, Sherry too, I'm sure, but everybody who knows me is always asking me after my family, after my son, my mom. It's just kind of crazy that I have this massive extended family through Ilta. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sherry?
So I began my career as a journalist. And, you know, that isn't in and of itself all that notable, except it was the time that I was a journalist. You know, implements to do any kind of content authoring were changing like at this rapid pace. At one point, there were 400 different word processing applications, and I feel like I used and worked, you know, authoring and producing articles for the newspaper on hundreds of them over that period of time. And I always like to say that there was just this one moment. Can't even tell you, Dawn, when precisely it was or what happened, but at some particular moment, I realized that I was more infatuated with the technology than I was with reporting, although I still do aspects of that. It's just I really got intrigued by the tools that you use to create content with. And so I have essentially spent my entire career around document authoring technologies and around managing source content and automating it and working it into processes, some of which I may have invented.
Yep.
That's that trailblazer part, right? It was at that point, these things hadn't been defined yet. And so you just kind of keep going to try to achieve whatever the goal is. And the next thing you know, you really are creating processes. And you know, like Jeffrey, I've worked directly with the people who are implementing, certainly not the end-to-end users always, but I've always enjoyed the fact that everything that I've done has been a collaboration. I think I was co-authoring before actually technically possible. And I am based outside of Chicago in what we affectionately call the land beyond O'Hare. So the other side, the west part after beyond O'Hare. I've been married actually a really long time. I have two daughters, both are married. One who's in Durango, Colorado, and a fourth grade teacher. She has two little babies. And then my young one is, this is frightening to me. She turns 30 this year. My young one turns 30 this year. So they're outside of Minneapolis. So that's me.
Wow. All right, so let's jump in. So both of you are very successful, and you have followed different roads to get where you are, as we've just heard. Who along your journey has left a lasting impact, and how have these trailblazers or legacy livers affected you, improved you, offered you opportunity, changed the landscape in which you live and work, or challenged you? And what does that mean going forward?
Mm,
Well, that is one heck of a question.
really is.
For me, to take it, if I go all the way back, I mean, certainly when I actually lived in Chicago because I went to DePaul University, and I got a temp job working for the corporate headquarters of Hyatt Hotels for just randomly as a word processor. And in that period, believe it or not, this is a crazy story. I ended up meeting most of the members of the Pritzker family just randomly because obviously they worked there with me. And from the very beginning, from the first time I met Penny and Nick and all of them, they were very supportive of me and very encouraging for me to try different things and do different things. They gave me all kinds of random jobs like loan draws and stuff I wasn't qualified for, but they felt like I could do it. So I think if I go way back, that was probably the first group of people I met who really pushed me to do things different than what I knew how to do and encouraged me to do it my way, right? They didn't try to turn me into a typical Hyatt employee. That let me be kind of out there on the fringe, being myself and being kind of just different. And they just didn't have an issue with that. And so I think for me, that's a very early memory of people who were smart and successful and saw something in me and encouraged me to pursue different things and try different things and don't worry about what my major was. And at the same time said, and do it all as yourself, right? Don't try to do it as a Pritzker, don't try to do it as somebody else, just do it as you. And that's going to be more than good enough, which I thought was a lucky, valuable lesson to learn really early on in life. Mm. So that's where I would start my story. So
All right.
I'm going to tear up. Because at the time, I was very young. I did not know that the Pritzkers were the Pritzkers and that I had no clue who these people really were. That was just Penny and Nick and different people that I was meeting in the hallway and probably not being completely appropriate with. And they were okay. And so much later on, I realized, oh my God, this is like an American Dynasty family. And I had no idea that they were like this just very important, politically savvy, super smart. Later on, people would tell me, oh my God, they robbed the gene pool and you got to work with them because they're all just so smart. So that was really a very fortunate experience, a very random, accidental, fortunate experience for me.
Very nice. Sherry, how about you?
For me, it was probably I wouldn't say it was in college, as in I was attending classes at that time, but I had finished my degree early and got a job working at the university. And it was this amazing department where the gentleman who ran the whole entire department at the school, he did all the lobbying in Jefferson City. I went to school in Northeast Missouri, and he did all the lobbying. And then in that same place, we did all the student publications. So newspaper, yearbook, all the alumni relations materials, the recruiting things for new students. If you will, it was just this incredible hub of so much. And the gentleman who ran it, his name is Tom Shrout, and he just had this great way of making everything more interesting. Because again, this group, I'm telling you, it was like everything happened there. And he was very aligned with the president of the university, so we even had bigger opportunities. And he just would always hand those projects down and give you some guidance and let you go and do that. And then he was there to answer questions. And I would say that was largely when I started to expect that kind of leader. Does that make sense? And that was such a gift, because then you knew going along the path, okay, this is not going to work out, right? You knew which places to kind of steer clear of, because he taught you what it meant to really be empowered. And I appreciated that and thrived in that. And it was such a creative pursuit, everything that we did. So that was mine.
Wow. So on that, Sherry, so what do you think the key attributes one has to pull, from deep down inside to be a trailblazer?
Well, I'm not sure, Donna, if this is for everyone, but I know for me, it is always a kind of empathy. It's either an empathy for meeting a need that someone has, or it's an empathy for a gap that exists that you might see before anybody else does. And you know that you have skills or methods or connections or something. You have a gift to add to it, and so it's always to me about empathy. And that's when, I think it's the same way that department was. We were always helping and serving the needs of others. It was sort of a hub for answering questions and for doing things. And Don, I'm going to give you one really good example of this. Later, I was on the newspaper at school, and my editor was just so incredible, but he came to me and said, Sherry, we have a story for you. We want you to realize that our international program here, we have the highest percentage of students from Iran that in any school within that whole area. And they said, we really want you to go and meet with these Iranian students and talk to them, because this was the period of time when it was the hostage crisis and how they were being treated. And I said, I know how to spell Iran, and I know Ted Koppel's been talking a lot about it, but I really don't know much else. And I said, are you sure you want to give me this story? And they said, yes, we are. And I did a series, Dawn, that went on for like 2 whole semesters through that whole entire crisis, and interviewed these kids. I had to meet them, in places where nobody was. Do you know what I mean? It was like, because they were truly under, it's not attack, but they were definitely being singled out and bullied and all of that. And as I said, that kind of gift to give somebody an initiative or a project or a task, knowing that they would grow into it, but being there to help them, I really thrive in that kind of a situation. And that was to me a really good example.
Wow, giving them a voice.
Yes.
That's powerful.
Exactly.
Yeah. Jeffrey, how about you?
To me, to be any kind of trailblazer, and I think it sounds obvious, but it really isn't. I think you have to be 100% comfortable just being yourself, whatever yourself is, right? So if I think about the people that I really admire, especially in our business, whether it's Joy or it's Judy Flournoy or it's Bonnie Spear McGrath, they're all very different personality types. They're not really similar people, but they're all so genuinely themselves. They don't put on a front. They don't, they're always themselves. So when I started out on this career, it was a long time ago, right? It was the mid 80s, and it wasn't like it is today. And there was a lot of pressure, because originally I started out in acting, to sort of play it straight or butch it up, or don't be so flamboyant, don't be so gay, don't use your hands so much. And I just never bought into that. I just kind of said, no, I'm not going to do any of that. I'm just going to be who I actually am. And if that works, great. If it doesn't work, then I'll just go be me somewhere else doing something where I can be myself. So I think to really be a trailblazer, you do have to be your genuine self, and you have to be willing to put your genuine self forward, whether you're hugely empathetic and a big hugger like Joy, or you're more reserved, or you're extremely organized, whatever it is. You have to really embrace that part of you that's just fundamentally who you are, and put that out there to possibly be criticized and be strong enough to keep going anyway, and saying, no, this is who I am, and I'm not going to change who I am, because I kind of know what I'm talking about here, and I'm the vehicle to deliver this, and I'm unapologetically me. And I think that's made a huge impact on my career. And I hope I've been able to impact other folks who've seen me through the years, always be myself and never worry about saying I have a husband or any of those things from, 25 years now. I hope that's empowered them to think, well, maybe I can be myself as well. I can be my actual genuine self.
I think too that problem solving and curiosity, those would be other attributes, because honestly, Jeffrey, those kinds of things you can't do if, right, you're not just naturally empowered to achieve something and to problem solve something and always being enthusiastic about that. I think really, really key attribute.
Especially curious. I think it's so helpful to be curious about things and to read something and it catch your attention and you kind of want to dig in and understand that a little bit more, even though maybe it's not your job, it's just like fascinating to you. I think that's a really important attribute as well, is that curiosity and maybe the willingness to sometimes just make a total ass of yourself and just say, I thought I kind of had a handle on this, like the time like 25 years ago when you and I were called to talk at that SharePoint conference when nobody even knew what SharePoint was, SharePoint 1.0. And why are you asking Sherry and I? It was a Microsoft conference. So we just did it, right? We tried to do our research and just showed up at the Dolphin and the Swan and did our thing to a room full of Microsoft people trying to tell them about their own product. But we were just brave enough to say, hey, I might get this wrong, but here's what I think is happening here. So I think bravery comes into it as well. You have to be brave enough to take some chances and then recognize when you're wrong and say, you know what, I totally got that wrong. I'm so sorry. And then to remedy that, to fix it.
I also think, and again, I don't know, Jeffrey, I haven't even asked you about this, but I personally, I can't really do something repetitively. It like drives me mad. That's why I automate everything, because I'll figure it out, automate it, and then I'm on to what can I now or streamline, coming next. And it's not that certainly we haven't all built up upon our careers with prior experiences and all of that. It's just more that drives me nuts to have to do the same thing over and over and over again. So I don't know.
It's true.
Well, I'm going to ask you the next question, but I'm pretty sure you've already answered it. So if there's anything that's left over, we can go with that. So what is your thought on support with your colleagues as it relates to mentoring? Do you have a philosophy or a personal quote or mantra that you live by?
I would say for me, the biggest thing, when I think about mentoring, which I've tried to do sort of informally throughout my career, before I even knew there was kind of a formal mentoring thing, that you could have an actual mentoring program and it could have things you did and processes that you followed. So when I first started thinking about mentoring, it was very informal. And it's more like taking someone under your wing and encouraging them to be their best and helping them to understand where they could excel. And I've always loved doing it. I think the biggest thing for me is it takes so much time to do it right and to be there for them. So I always tell people, don't go into a mentoring position, underestimating what you're actually agreeing to do, because those people come to depend upon you and you're building this relationship and you can't just take them part of the way and say, oh, I'm sorry, I've run out of time on you. So for me, it's all about having the level of commitment to really connect with someone and really help them understand where I think they can flourish in this world and how they're going to get there. And I've had so many opportunities because, in law firm structure, the way it works, I go into a law firm, I meet a secretary, I meet a help desk person, and I just immediately say, oh, this person is very talented. This person has the right stuff, if you will, and they just need a little push. And so for years, I was the king of the little push, just a little push. I think you could actually become Kim Fields, one of my favorite people. I think you could be a total developer. You just need to do this, this, and this. And let's see if we can make that happen. And she's like, stop, you're gonna cause me to get fired. Don't talk to my boss. I'm like, no, we got a plan. So I think for me, the hardest thing is it just requires a lot of time, and the more work in your career, the more mature you get in your career, where you should be doing more mentoring because you've learned all these things. It's ironic that you have less time to mentor as you get more mature in your career. And so that's when I think about mentoring, it's more of a loss. I wish I had more time to mentor more people, because I feel like I did that a lot more earlier in my career. And I tried to influence as many people to be everything they could be. And now I kind of miss that. I miss that ability to sort of see those folks. Actually, Don, this is a total sidebar. You may have to edit this out. But when we did IltaCon Europe together, we were there, as you may recall, a year and a half ago, whatever. I ended up meeting someone who was in one of my sessions, and he came up and talked to me. And he's kind of like, well, you know, I do this now, but I've always kind of wanted to do training. Believe it or not, 18 months later, I have gotten him into a training position remotely, doing mentoring through, you know, like texting and connections and, you know, watch this video, call this person, do a teach back for me. So, and it just reminds me how much I love doing that. But it's just so, for me, it's become more rare. I don't get to do it very often.
Wow.
For me, I think the mantra that I either guide myself by or try to unpack for people that I'm helping is to make it memorable. And that's generally because the area that I work in, it's a lot of customer facing conversations, implementations, projects, and so forth. And so I always want everyone to recognize that they can make it memorable for someone else. They don't have to follow a formula, you know, like that they really can put themselves into what the customer remembers. And that's what builds the relationships, and that's what gives them all of the opportunities that follow, frankly, because you make it memorable and they're going to come back. Right? It's that adage that is, they won't remember what you said, but they'll certainly remember how you made them feel. And that's the kind of guidance or sort of strategy that I try to take. You know, that's about it.
Okay. So you guys have both been involved in Ilta for a while, just a little bit, just a little while. What are some of the things that you have gained from being a part of Ilta?
I think hands down, it is the collaboration. It is the safe place to experiment. It is you get to sort of try out your leadership, if you will, and just get guidance by virtue of whatever it is you're volunteering to do. And that network is just so strong and so collaborative and so helpful. You don't even realize that you're building those skills when you're working and volunteering for Elta. I do think, though, that, and I have to say this, I think that the education, the groundedness in education and learning, I would say just even technically and or, you know, on any topic really, it's been like a continuing education series since 1997 when I first attended my first Ilta, which wasn't even called Ilta then. So,
Jeffrey, how about for you?
You know, when I think about, you know, I was talking earlier about sort of my relationship to Chicago and Hyatt and the Pritzkers and how helpful that was to me. Definitely that, and it was, but really my career proper, the career I'm in right now today, and I continue to be in, is, in all honesty, I pretty much owe completely to Ilta, in my opinion. I think Ilta is the catalyst that's really driven my career because of the different opportunities, the relationships I've made, and just the role that I've tried to play. And it all started for me. I remember I worked for a woman named Kathy Wallach who owned Perfect Access in New York. And she called me into her office one day and she said, "You're going to Scottsdale, Arizona," which I'd never been to. to give a presentation for a group called LawNet, which I'd never heard of, on the topic called "Why is Word Fighting with Me?" That's your topic. And I said, I knew nothing, literally. I'm like, what does this mean? How do I get there? What do I do? I was young and I had not traveled much. And she's like, go figure it out. You got this. And so I tried to do my thing. I flew into Phoenix. I tried to get a cab to Scottsdale. I walk into the Camelback Inn. I'm completely petrified, terrified. And literally the first person I run into is Peggy. And she's, like flowing red hair goddess standing there in the middle of everything, directing traffic. And she's like, you look lost. I said, I'm here to give a presentation. She's like, come with me. And just like swoops in. She takes me to my room. I get, 20 minutes before I step on the stage, there's like 300 people or what? It's a crazy big audience. I'm a super nervous wreck. And I just decided, I have to just do this the way I would do this if I had 8 students in a class. I have to do it the same way with the same level of humor and empathy. And I did it. And, that really was the beginning for me, because after that, it was like, no, they would call Kathy, no, Kathy, we want Jeffrey to come. It has to be Jeffrey. And so she starts, sending me to all the conferences. And then I start doing, legal tech and just so really, I think that's the catalyst for the way my career forked really at that point. Because I had primarily been at that point at Sony Music for many years, almost like an in-house resource. And so I was very devoted to that client, and I didn't give speeches. I didn't write articles. I was busy at my job, but it was very focused on that one experience. And that sort of pulled me out of that and put me in front of an audience. And my career has it's taken that direction of being much more of a speaker, much more of sort of a personality, if you will, an entertainer, trying to, do what I can to move that needle a little bit across the entire industry, not just one client at a time. So for me, I think Elta has, I know for a fact, it is the catalyst for the career I have. I might have had a different career without it, like a completely different career, but I would not have the current career that I have today if I had not been thrown into that LawNet speech on why Word was fighting with people and why everybody hated it so much. So that's what it means to me. It's pretty significant for me.
Wow. So as we're wrapping this up, if you could boil all of your legacy knowledge into one phrase that you could share with others, what would that be?
Legacy knowledge. Is that what you said?
Legacy knowledge.
Legacy.
You're passing that on down. Yes. One phrase.
It's so hard because really, to me, one thing that I've tried so hard to do in my career is to be generous, just in every sort of definition of the word. Just always be generous with my time, with other people, with other people's experience, that it's different than mine. We come from different places. So that is something that I've tried to actively practice my whole life, is to be generous of spirit, if you know what I mean, Don. Just when someone says something that might be a contrary, to try to be generous in my spirit with them, that I know that that's coming from fear or that's coming from something in their lives. And rather than going on attack, just try to meet that with generosity and just to be as generous as I can to fold them in and make them feel included and feel smart and feel like they gave me the right answer when maybe they didn't. Because it's just such an easy thing to do, to include others and to be generous is just really not that hard. But I find, sometimes we forget to do that when we're in a leadership role. We're thinking we have to lead, and we forget sometimes to be very generous with our spirit, with our time, with just who we are as a person. So for me, that would be my advice, to always try to be generous in really every aspect of the word. Just try to give as much as you can, because it's going to come back. You're going to get all that back. You're going to build those relationships, and you're going to turn those people around who might have come in there kind of angry and upset and thinking that you're an interloper and you're going to ruin everything for them. If you're super generous with them and you take the time and really make that connection. At the end of it, they're your biggest advocate. They're your biggest cheerleader. They love you now, and you can do no wrong. Trust me, I know I get pulled back in like 20 years later to do the same damn thing again. So that would be my catchphrase, is just to be generous in all aspects of the word.
Very good. Sherry, how about for you?
I think it's related to being generous. I think for me, it's more about helping people through some kind of change, helping them get sure-footed about it. I don't know that I can distill it down into a phrase, but it's more, maybe it's simply helping them be a trailblazer by giving them the confidence and the knowledge and just the stepping stones they might need to wind their way through it. It's a kind of teaching thing or mentoring thing, because for working in legal technology, there's a lot of demand for it being perfect and it being right and it being a straight and predictable course. And, just giving them the little tiny steps that they need to kind of move forward from not knowing, that might be my phrase, is really just be professional at I don't know. That's what you got to do. Be really good at I don't know. But and I can help you find out too.
That's fantastic. Guys, you have been absolutely wonderful. Thank you for coming on and sharing your experiences and a little walk down memory lane. You truly are industry icons. And thank you very much for coming on and sharing.
Thank you. It's good to talk to you.